you who are joining us for the first time, Fate Alliance is a nonprofit land use advocacy organization. We are completely funded by donations from engaged citizens like all of you. We're dedicated to achieving smart, equitable, and sustainable growth in Lexington, Fayette County in three main areas. The first is land use advocacy. We work hard at City Hall and beyond to advocate for policies and laws to sustainably and equitably grow our city and preserve and promote our farms. We advocate for policies that promote community-driven investment and discourage displacement. The second avenue of our mission is research. We know at Fate Alliance that it's not if we grow, it's how we grow. We focus on how we grow by working with experts to conduct research on the complex issues facing our community's development. And the third prong of our mission is education. Citizens Planning Academy, now Grow Smart Academy, is the premier educational offering from Fate Alliance. This is a 4-session program offered every summer. We want citizens to get involved and understand the issues that impact our community. We also have various in-person events or Zoom events like tonight's session to hear from local experts on a variety of smart growth topics throughout the year. Through our programs, our newsletter, and our various social channels, we want our community, like each of you, to understand how land use decisions impact our community's health, economic development, environment, and quality of life, as well as how to advocate for smart and equitable land use policies. We know that historically and currently, inequitable and sometimes well-intentioned land use decisions have had a negative impact on marginalized communities, which are often communities of color. Before we jump in, I do want to mention a few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute. Please remain on mute until we have our breakout sessions after our panel has answered their questions. We ask that any questions that you all have, which we certainly encourage, are placed in the chat at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to answer all of the questions during our Q&A session. We'll start off with questions from our panelists, and then we'll have time for Q&A from the audience. And last, for those of you who would like to stay after our panel discussion, we'll place you each into breakout session groups for 15 minutes. That will begin at 6:30 to get to know each other and discuss what you've learned tonight. Everyone should have received links earlier this afternoon to additional resources on AgTech or agricultural technology in your email this morning. And we encourage you after the session or maybe tomorrow as you're digesting it to check those out. Now I'll jump in and frame our conversation for this evening and then introduce our panelists. So AgTech or agricultural technology is the use of technology in agriculture. It's also a hot topic in economic development, especially as we see the industry begin to grow in Lexington. Agriculture in Lexington is our factory floor. It has an enormous impact on our community to the tune of $2.3 billion on an annual basis. Tonight, we'll discuss the evolving landscape of the industry of AgTech, how it will impact our community, and the progress of current AgTech business initiatives from experts on our panel. It is my pleasure now to introduce the AgTech experts and our distinguished panelists for the evening. We have Mayor Linda Gorton, Dean Nancy Cox, Dean of UK's College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, and Jordan Wood, CEO of RedLeaf Biologics. I'll start by letting each of the panelists tell us a bit about themselves. And Mayor Gorton, I will turn it over to you to please introduce yourselves to our attendees.
Thank you very much, Brittany, and thank you all for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. And Brittany gave us a time frame, so I'm going to be quick. I am a registered nurse and spent a full career in nursing, much of which was while I was a council member for 16 years. All of my grandparents were farmers. And so I grew up spending much of my summers, almost every summer, on one or the other's farm. And so I grew up with a great appreciation for land and for what the land could raise. You know, they were business people. And so a few years ago, I got into a wonderful conversation with Dr. Pierce Lyons about AgTech and how we are perfectly situated for it here. So long story short, and then I'll be done with this intro. During 2018, when I was running for mayor, one of my platform pieces was to help Lexington figure out what it was going to take for us to be an ag tech hub, because we have all the pieces here.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gorton. We're so appreciative and lucky to have a leader that has such a dedication to agriculture here in Lexington. Dean Cox, I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself to our attendees.
Thank you, Brittany. I certainly appreciate the Fayette Alliance, and I see a lot of friends, really good friends on this call tonight, and it's really a pleasure to be here. I came here to Lexington in 2001 to serve as the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Agriculture, which was just agriculture at that time, and intending not to stay very long, and I fell in love with Lexington. I fell in love with the unique position our city is in with respect to farmland within its boundaries, and not to mention both the equine and bourbon industries, as well as our leading position in cattle and so many other things. Our job now is, when we're talking about ag tech, we've always been innovators at land grant universities, but I think what we're trying to do now is kick it up a notch and claim what Mayor Gorton rightly said was our niche and our leadership position in the ag tech area.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Jordan Wood, have you introduced yourself to the group here?
Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, my name is Jordan Wood. I am the CEO of RedLeaf Biologics, and it probably makes sense that I go after Dean Cox because our company was actually founded on some technology that was developed out of the university. So exactly sort of the leadership and innovation she was talking about is exactly what we are trying to build off of and commercialize and kind of bring it from the lab to the market, so to speak. So a brief background on RedLeaf, just because that may be a bit of an unknown to everyone on here. We are utilizing a variety of sorghum, like I said, that was developed at UK, that produces these really interesting coloring and antioxidant compounds. And so we're in the process of extracting these compounds and commercializing them for use as natural colorants. So you think of Red 40 replacements. And then also the antioxidant has a very functional ingredient side for use in health and wellness, but also cosmetic spaces for your anti-aging and your free radical scavenging products that are kind of heavily sought after. I myself am actually an attorney by trade. To tell you how much I am all in on ag tech, I practiced for almost 8 years in Birmingham, Alabama, made partner, and left 6 months later to come up here and work for RedLeaf full time. So got a few raised eyebrows on the way out the door, but believe heavily both in RedLeaf, but also the opportunity that AgTech is providing here in Lexington and within the state.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, to all of you, to each of our panelists, we're so glad to have you all here this evening. I think so often and for so many years when people think about agriculture and land here in Lexington, a lot of, we think about tourism, when we think about the horse farms and things like that. But particularly our work in Fayette Alliance is really talking about what agriculture means to this community. It means so much in so many different areas. Like I mentioned, it's $2.3 billion of our economy on an annual basis. It's 1 in 12 jobs, and that's a conservative figure. And I think that really just says so much and really sets the stage for what we can achieve with AgTech. And I'm so glad that we have such a big group here tonight, because I think as people in the community have heard this word AgTech, they wonder, what does that really mean and what does it mean for Lexington? So my first question is really, for each of you, telling our group about your work with AgTech, how it came about, and what it means in general and what it means particularly to this community. Mayor Gorton, if you could start us off there.
Well, I'm not the expert in ag tech. I'll just say that right now, but I know that it has great potential for Fayette County as well as all of Kentucky. And so when I first came into office, let me back up real quickly. And I'm watching my watch. When When I came into office, I had been one of the council members back in 1999 who approved the Rural Land Management Plan so that we could understand how we were going to use our rural area. And then the next year, in 2000, we approved our Purchase of Development Rights Plan. And here's what my perspective on the land is. If you could stand on the urban service boundary, which you know isn't marked off, but you stand on it and you look toward downtown. So what do we see? We see neighborhoods, we see businesses, we see lots of businesses. But guess what? If you turn around and look outward, what do you see? You see businesses, every one of them. And this is my perspective on our land. It is simply land-based business. It's not based on lots of buildings. And when people understand that, they understand the potential for our economy. So the first thing I did when I took office was to ask Dean Cox and Commissioner Ryan Quarles, Commissioner of Agriculture, and Dr. Mark Lyons, if they would sit down and talk with me about how we might partner on AgTech. We had all the pieces here. We have the land, which many cities don't have. We have low cost of living, good quality of life. You can just name off all those wonderful reasons that Jordan and others come here and stay here. And so I knew we had this potential. And then, as with everything, particularly we've learned during COVID, partnerships are everything. And so we had this wonderful steering committee who were willing to just kind of plow forward on this. And I know that Dean Cox will tell you more about that, but we are at a really good place where we've learned a lot, and we did that through focus groups. So I'm really excited, pairing agriculture with technology, whether it's research and development, whether it's growing a little plot of land to prove something. There are all kinds of iterations of it.
Absolutely. It's such an exciting development for Lexington, using these resources that we have and that make us so unique to really build this. Dean Cox, can you tell us about your work with AgTech, how that began with the university, and obviously, like Jordan said, what's come of it and where we're headed?
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. I certainly share the inspiration that Pierce Lyons, that the mayor mentioned about Pierce Lyons. I heard him say that too, that Kentucky should be a center for ag tech. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of the pieces and parts. We haven't really claimed all of our space, but we are working on it. And I also wanted to highlight another thing the mayor said. We have the land. We are a land-based business cluster here. Think about the horse industry. There are 50 businesses that support the horse, 50 types of businesses that support the horse industry, everything from animal pharmaceuticals to veterinary care to dry cleaning services or laundries for horse stuff. So we are a business cluster that depends on the land. It is certainly not just horses. It extends to local food production systems and cattle farms and other enterprises as well. So the university's role in this is to discover innovative technologies, and we might discover them in the laboratory or in a computer lab, and make the translational activities to get them out into the business world. And that is exactly what Jordan will tell about better than I. But we think it's our role as a university to produce the high-tech innovations as well as the workforce. And Mayor Gorton mentioned our study, our consultancy that the 4 partners, the mayor, the commissioner of ag, Mark Lyons of AgTech, and UK undertook. And we had a consultancy with a very famous former Harvard leader of the Global Ag Business Program, Mary Shellman. And so she has helped do a lot of focus groups and identify some technologies. But I think more importantly than that, Mary had the idea that most of Kentucky is ag of the middle. We're not the 10,000 acre grain crop. When you drive through Iowa, you see a lot of cornfields. You see that in the west part, but not in most of Kentucky. So we want to really play up the ag in the middle. What will it make? What technologies would make it easier for a fellow who has 50 head of beef cows to work in town and still manage his cows adequately? Things like that. So we're really excited about the kind of focus as developing technologies suitable for Kentucky. And we believe we can claim a very lead space in that among other states east of the Mississippi.
Thank you, Dean Cox. And Jordan, I really look to you next to tell us about your work with RedLeaf and about how you all came out of UK and how this partnership continues to work, as well as some examples of the work that you all doing. I will mention as well, and we talked about this briefly previously, but as I was doing some research and looking into AgTech and the information behind it before this call, I found out that you all were working with the James Farm, as you mentioned, growing of the sorghum. And so, working with the local farm that's been in a family here in Lexington for generations, that's protected by the purchase of development rights. And I thought that was such an exciting connection, that this incredibly, historic general ag farm was working with a company like RedLeaf, with technology of the future. So just a little tidbit, if you could comment on that as well, but just to tell us more about RedLeaf and your work, how you're partnering with this community, and where you all are heading.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, the James Farm has been wonderful, and quite frankly, one of the pain points that I can talk about in a bit has always been finding the right network of growers that are willing to kind of take the risk of a new technology in the ag space, and to be able to have somebody that close that's willing to kind of partner and work with us on that has been invaluable. So, and in a happy accident, they reached out to us, where it's usually RedLeaf going out and trying to find the right grower. They actually saw something we were doing kind of similar to this and reached out on their own. And I was like, well, this is too good to be true. So we partnered with them this year and had a great growing season. That was, I think, as Dean Cox was saying, this was maybe a 10-minute drive from our offices to be in the field. And that goes back to Mayor Gorton's point, which is, I was not familiar with Lexington before I moved here, but standing in the middle of downtown, basically a 10-minute drive in any direction, and you've got ample land basically available to be used. And so you have all these ag-based businesses and technologies that I'm seeing around us that are starting to emerge. And RedLeaf's story started, we actually founded the company back in 2015, based on some results they were seeing within the lab at UK. And it's just an interesting happy accident where they were doing experiments for another reason and noticed that, oh, this plant has a unique red leaf to it. And I think partly through the culture that they had developed there, the scientists that looked at it had the wherewithal to say, you know what, let's take this plant and keep looking at it and see what we can do with it. And over the course of, I think, almost 10 years, up till 2015, they developed a variety that was ready to be commercialized. And so we founded the company back in 2015, exploring these natural colorants and healthy antioxidant properties. We were able to obtain lab space, an incubator space effectively on UK's campus that provided us just wonderful access to lab equipment and all those things we needed to do our proof of concept, but also kind of those early stage de-risking things that we needed to show that we are truly something worth investing in Lexington. And so all of this is here. There are a lot of that I'll speak about in a minute, but there are a lot of people coming to Lexington that we've been able to attract, but also people that we've been able to keep here in Lexington that may otherwise leave because of these possibilities of growing something in a town that's just has the resources available to it in 10 minutes in any direction. So I mean, to the inherent point of like how we define ag tech, I mean, everyone I typically speak with usually describes as tech as kind of these improvements to specific metrics, whether it's crop yield or harvest efficiency or overall profitability. So you think of, high-tech weather gauges or just kind of incorporating the Internet of Things into all things agriculture. But I would almost describe it more broadly as just almost kind of how Mayor Gorton said it. It's this intersection of technology and agriculture. And that can be, in our case, something as it can be improving existing practices, but it can also be bringing something entirely new, an entirely new practice or product to the market that didn't otherwise exist. And that's kind of the opportunity we've been given and that the city is helping us develop.
There's this really incredible potential, and I think that's something that's so exciting as we move forward, that we're able to use this incredible asset that we have here in Fayette County, the land, to really propel us forward. So my next question is, how and why is Lexington so uniquely suited for this type of development? And maybe Jordan, if you can start first, just when you all founded, the company in 2015 and decided to stay here, how did you all see these? I know you mentioned obviously those kind of unique characteristics, but if you can expand on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, sure. So, being a sorghum product, one of the first things we needed to do was to partner with a sorghum grower who could help us. On the business and science side, we were not as versed on the agricultural side, so we needed to find somebody who knew how to grow sorghum. And within an hour of us, we found a third generation sweet sorghum grower who had been, this has been growing here in Kentucky for generations. And so the level of skilled agricultural operations that exists both within but just outside of Lexington and the land is phenomenal. And for us to be able to try to do this, if we were in on the West Coast or somewhere else, and to find that sorghum grower who is willing to grow it, we would be hundreds of thousands of miles away from where we needed to be able to see those plants. But yeah, I mean, some of the positive effects that we've seen, like I said before, is just the influx of skilled labor into Lexington, both on the farmer side and dealing with these sophisticated farmers who know their operations and their metrics down to basically the cent, but also being able to have a place like the University of Kentucky where you have these departments that are putting out people that are ready to work in a company like RedLeaf as soon as they graduate. We're not necessarily needing somebody with 5 years of industry experience. We've got 2 food scientists we hired straight out of undergrad that have been wonderful additions to the company. And so both the access to the growing knowledge that's right around us, but also the development that's happening here in Lexington and within the university has just allowed us to, quite frankly, advance our commercialization timelines greater than we would have in any other city.
I might jump in and to something that Jordan said. And Dean Cox mentioned our consultant, Mary Shellman, who sometime pre-COVID led us, we had some focus groups with some ag tech companies that were already here. And one thing we discovered is we already have a cluster. And we didn't, until we were starting to study this, we didn't really know what kind of cluster we might have or might not have. So that was very encouraging to me. And then something that Jordan said about the University of Kentucky reminded me that in these focus groups, we asked each of these folks, we had several of them, different people would roll in and then roll out. What's the number one thing you need when you look at a community? And they all said workforce. They need workforce. And so that ties right into what Jordan said about the University of Kentucky, which trains so many engineers and tech people and ag people and food. It's all right there. And then one of the things I didn't mention that I think is a great thing about Fayette County now is that we are one of the very largest cities in the nation now that's a 5G city. That's a gig city. We're working on the 5G. That's a gig city. We finished it. And to companies that need that 1 gigabyte, it's a big deal. So we're putting all those pieces into place.
My thoughts on why Lexington. Most of our citizens have a high commitment to farmland, local food. We have the hamburger product in Kroger, Beef Solutions, that has been well supported. And we are experiencing across Kentucky now an influx of new local processing plants so that we can expand our ability to raise and process and consume animals that never left Kentucky. So I think one of the things that I would like to note is our citizens like these things. Certainly, why Lexington University has been mentioned. It is our job to produce public good. We've got about a dozen companies now that were founded or that we work with from the College of Ag, Food and Environment. We have students who do internships. We train undergrads in these internships. We also train graduate students. We try to mix the science with the business. There are competitions at the university for student-led technology ideas and student-led companies that have to blend the technology and the business plan. So we are able to put all that together. Dr. Garkovich is on this call, and she put a note in the chat, and she's kind of the originator of the land-based business cluster concept around here. But the land-based cluster is our opportunity to show how it can be done. A land-based cluster that creates green, useful businesses. So there's a lot of reason for why Lexington, but certainly as the land-grant university, our goal is also to cover all of Kentucky with whatever technologies and businesses can be appropriate.
Thank you. And I think really, we've heard from all three of you about some positive impacts of the AgTech industry on Lexington, being able to employ people here, being able to utilize this highly educated workforce that's coming out of our university. But can any of you speak to some additional, maybe positive impacts on our community that haven't been touched on, and then what those future benefits look like as we continue to develop this opportunity going forward?
I'd like to mention one quick one. We know through economic downturns that communities who have a more diverse, broad base of types of business sectors do better. We saw that in, I think it probably was around 2008 or maybe before, with the Michigan automobile industry. Cities that are dependent on one large industry have a very difficult time. AgTech adds another sector to our diverse businesses here. We have big healthcare. We have lots of small businesses. We're known for our restaurants, and we're going to come back from that after the pandemic. But we have all these different sectors. So this is one that's that we can grow and will add to that diversity.
Another characteristic of the university is that we are one of the few university campuses that has as many colleges all on the same plot of land. So law, pharmacy, medicine, health sciences, agriculture. so we can tap a lot of different folks and a lot of different areas of expertise. And I will speak for my fellow deans in saying that giving back to Kentucky and creating new economic opportunities in Kentucky is certainly a goal.
Yeah, I was honestly just going to second exactly what Dean Cox and Mayor Gorton said, just about the diversity of the workforce that I've seen created through AgTech. I mean, sometimes it's company specific. You know, for RedLeaf, for instance, we're executing across mechanical harvesting. We have skilled scientists in the lab doing food science work. We have our life scientist who's actually doing like plant genetics and that sort of work. We also have a Harvard MBA that we were able to recruit here, who's doing a lot of the business and marketing and commercial operations. So there's this ecosystem that even from 2017, when I first moved here, is starting to develop, not just within our company, but when I go to these meetings where people are getting new grants in the door to try to commercialize a new or emerging technology, you start to see more of a theme that a lot of these are kind of ag based. And so the skill set, and I'm able to talk to somebody who's, potentially developing a new pesticide or natural herbicide application. And so people that I wouldn't have ordinarily immediately connected with once I was here, I'm now connecting with, and we're all kind of cross-pollinating and not only solving each other's problems and helping all of us commercialize, but we're effectively trying to develop a workforce that's going to be able to, like Mayor Gorton said, provide a new and diverse sector in and of itself that's kind of standalone.
Absolutely. Those are excellent points. And I think, especially about the diversity of Lexington, making it such a resilient city. And I recall Mayor Gorton, actually Dr. Allison Davis, who's also at UK and has done some great work for Fate Alliance, did a presentation to your commission on racial justice about that exact thing, about how resilient Lexington is because of the diversity of its workforce and its economy. And that's such a key part that I think is so important for all of us to remember, especially when we think about agriculture, that there's even diversity there's incredible diversity within agriculture itself. And this ag tech is such a huge piece of that opportunity. So we know that there are these amazing opportunities moving forward. What kind of challenges do you see, Mayor Gorton, our community facing in entering this space? As you said, we did actually already have a cluster here, which is a huge step up. But we're not that large scale, 10,000 acre farm like the Iowas and things like that. So what kind of challenges have you seen that we will have to overcome in moving forward in this space? And how do you see us overcoming those challenges?
Well, that is the $1 million question, right? So one interesting thing to me is that in our conversations, and I've forgotten exactly when it was pre-pandemic, I served on a panel discussion about this in Louisville, and they had a couple tech companies from California, and they've never heard of us. So we have a problem there in that in our desire to draw tech companies here, I think we need to continue to market ourselves, to toot our own horn, because we do have so many good things about our community as a place to live and work. The second thing that we discovered, or one of the big things that we discovered in our work with Mary Shellman and our, the consulting work she did, is that we need venture capital. We need private investment. We are not known for that. And it's very important in getting this sort of a sector going that we do have significant private investment. because that helps make it work. I'm sure Jordan can tell you that straight off, that people have to fund their businesses to get them up and running. Now, I will say, and I see my Chief Development Officer on here, Kevin Adkins, we have talked a good deal about the fact that we do have land that the city owns out there on Coldstream, right on the interstate. It's not available yet. As the dean knows, it still has cattle on it, I think, dairy. And so we're in a position where we have some land right off when it's ready in another year and a half or 2 years to have it available for an ag tech company. And the needs are fascinating. We had one discussion at a meeting about how perhaps two businesses would want to share space. They'd each have their space with a common lab area or a plot of land right outside for growing, whatever they're researching. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But the marketing, I think, is very big because the farther west you go, it seems that people don't know about us. I actually met someone who didn't know on the map where Kentucky was. And then, of course, that's very bad. But I would say two that come to mind are marketing and the investment in the sector to help get us going. And of course, we always need to grow our base of existing food and that sort of thing.
Absolutely, and a great question that I saw in the chat, just to touch on those comments that you just made about those challenges, Mayor, and about that land. Are there ongoing collaborative efforts, whether that is here in Lexington with our economic development agencies, or on a more regional and statewide level as well, for that to overcome and work towards those challenges?
Oh, that's a great question. I know that Dean Cox and myself, Commissioner Quarles, several of us are on the governor's AgTech advisory board, and we're really thrilled about that. And they are looking at what we're doing here because we've had kind of a running start of it. And so my vision, and I think the vision of our steering committee and the folks we've been working with, is that this is not something we just want to keep to ourselves. This has great regional and statewide importance. Wouldn't it be great if Kentucky became known as one of the ag tech capitals of our country? That's kind of where we're going. We're thinking about this in a big way. And so we are trying to get the word out and working with folks at the state, regional, and state levels to help them understand what we're talking about. And it does have that kind of potential.
Absolutely. And Jordan, I think right before I asked the mayor that question, you had unmuted. Did you want to add to that as well?
Oh, I was going to speak just some of the things the mayor had mentioned just about the difficulties of starting an ag tech. If you'll allow me to just kind of back up a second. I mean, exactly what she said is spot on. One of the notes I always make is it doesn't matter if it's ag tech versus any other startup. A lot of those same pain points are still there. In particular, lack of immediate access to capital, having to either tap into or build our own revenue channels, negotiating from positions of little to no power, just being a startup, and also having to build the right team to actually execute for commercialization. Like those are all there. Like whether it's a startup selling widgets or if it's specifically to ag tech, all of those things are still things that RedLeaf is working on and building towards, but also every other startup I've ever come in contact with. And so access to capital in particular is always just something, the more there is, and there are a lot of startup companies coming out there looking for it, but just the more access that's available to them, I think even from the investor standpoint, they're going to get a lot better in terms of how their deal flow is structured and what they're seeing on their end, and getting better investments as well. So I certainly welcome the venture capital and the continued angel investment in the community. And the other item I guess I would note that's a little bit specific to RedLeaf is just build, in my mind, kind of my utopian vision of this is building this repository of growers within the state, both within Fayette County and Lexington, but also within the state at large, where you have a company like RedLeaf who's bringing something new to the AgTech sector. And there's this existing repository of growers kind of ready and willing to look into this and to understand what the capital investment may be on their end to incorporate the technology. And it seems like it's starting to move that way as Lexington and the state at large starts to become a real ag tech sector in terms of all these opportunities that I think are quite frankly out there. There are tons of growers ready to talk to us about growing red leaf sorghum instead of potentially corn, soybean, or tobacco, but finding them and connecting with them is something where we just don't have the bandwidth at the startup level to necessarily pull off. So being able to collaborate, whether it's through the Chamber of Commerce or at the state level, is something that would certainly be beneficial to us.
Jordan, you're producing something that could be the silver bullet that everybody talks about, replacing tobacco. So many of the high value crops might better be grown in a greenhouse and therefore don't give opportunities to farmers. So I think the word will spread pretty quick about that as you go forward. Also, I'd like to mention there's a fairly big conversation, whether you call it AgTech or AgriTech right now. Thanks to the governor for making it a platform. The governor's Office of Ag Policy, which distributes tobacco settlement funds for agriculture purposes, is undertaking a big task force on agritech right now. The Kentucky Farm Bureau has done a review of all its members to talk about the potential. And so I think we've gotten a great moment of interest in elevating Kentucky. And I think not only for creating companies, but for attracting companies. We are a beautiful state with water, beautiful forage, beautiful forest. We should be attractive. We call it the horse health capital of the world. We have the Gluck Center, we have the diagnostic lab, we have 2 premier Mayo clinics for horses in our same county, as well as a lot of other great veterinarians. But why shouldn't we be the center of the horse health industry? Why shouldn't we aspire to that? Certainly a lot of companies approach us about working with us because of the horse space. Likewise with the bourbon industry, we have the James Beam Institute, and there are a whole lot of technologies that can develop around bourbon, around the industry that now is a high tech, now thinks of itself as a high tech industry and a global competitor. What opportunities do we have there as well?
And Dr. or Dean Cox, how is UK, do you think that the infrastructure, I know you spoke a little bit to this, but do you think that the infrastructure for educating people to be prepared to be that workforce that Jordan mentioned, that they were able to hire people right out of undergrad, which is this incredible resource that UK is providing. Have you all had to change your infrastructure? Are you implementing changes at the university to better prepare people? Was that already in place, or what does that look like going forward?
Well, we're always trying to get better. And one of the things in our college and others, we try to let all the experience, to not let all the experience be in the classroom, and to get internships and other opportunities. And one of the best opportunities is when you get a science kid on a team with a business kid, and they put forth a company and a competition, and that cross-disciplinary education is important. I think we could always do that better. We also certainly try to keep our curricula up to date. And again, teaching the other skills, sometimes called the soft skills. We tend to be, a lot of us, too technical. And so we need to remember that all the students we're training are going to go into a workplace where they need to get along with everyone. And so we work on that. We also work with industry education directly, continuing education. So, and when we do that, it serves two purposes. It helps the industry get some credentials or technical skills. It also helps them tell us what we need to do for our students. How can we make our students better suited to their needs? So it's kind of a cycle. And likewise, we like to get advice from the existing businesses such as RedLeaf as to what kind of students you guys are looking for.
Absolutely. I know Jordan can identify as a recovering attorney, but law school, I wish that there had been more opportunity to experience in the community and with these kind of companies and things like that to make us better lawyers, right? There are some wonderful questions in the chat, so I would like to go to some of the questions from our audience here. And Dr. Garkovich has an excellent question here. Please speak to the kinds of local and state policies essential to growing the ag tech sector of the ag economic cluster. So Mayor Gorton, I know you mentioned the marketing and the venture capital and the investment here. Anything policy wise, and this is for anybody to speak to, but policy wise, both local and state, that are really critical to moving this industry forward.
Well, I've just real quickly, I think on the local level, we made one of the biggest policy decisions we ever could have made back in 2000 when we created the Purchase of Development Rights program, which is greatly misunderstood by many people. No one's making new land, are they? We have what we have. And communities that have not protected some of their land do not have land for crops. They do not have land for local food. And to me, that was probably the biggest policy issue that we have done. And that was 20 years ago. And because if you don't have land, then you don't have the ability to grow. And contrary to what many people think, a lot of people think that the PDR program is all horse farms. It is way more than horse farms. It's cattle. It's all those things that Dean Cox mentioned. It's turkeys, chickens. It's sheep. It's everything. Hemp. I see a hemp grower on here. So that how local legislators treat their land is the biggest policy issue they can ever tackle, I think, locally.
That's a great point. And we were so, I'm so glad that we were so forward thinking in that way. I know even just last year, this past year in 2020, that, 2 of the 3 farms that went under easement with the Purchase of Development Rights program were cattle and general ag farms, and one of those was equine related. So I think that's an excellent point. Dr. Cox or Jordan?
Yeah, I can speak quickly just as something that's specific to RedLeaf. Starting out, we were fortunate enough to apply and be awarded a small grant from the National Science Foundation in order to do that initial proof of concept work, and that we could actually pull the things out of the plant that we were wanting to do, and that it was food safe. One of the great byproducts of receiving that initial grant, that federal grant, was that we were able to actually apply for a matching state grant. So we had additional non-dilutive funding coming in. And the state of Kentucky was, whereas the federal grants are often very much line itemed for R&D purposes, the Kentucky matching funds allowed us to explore more commercial opportunities or make strategic hires and use the funds a bit more expansively to really accelerate our commercialization. So that's been, at least from our experience, just a wonderful opportunity that's available to to early stage companies that may have a grant under their belt and can look for, additional non-dilutive ways to advance their technology within the state. And at least since I've been here, I know of at least, I think, a couple that have actually relocated to Kentucky for specifically to utilize that opportunity. So it's not something that necessarily exists in every state.
What Jordan's referring to, I think, are small business innovation research and the like, so that a company can get funding from the federal government. And we have that in agriculture as well as biomedical, and National Science Foundation. And the program by which the state matches a company that's lucky enough to get one of those grants, it is just huge, and it's real important. And certainly we appreciate the Governor Bashir's emphasis on AgriTech. We'll have to flip a coin someday on AgriTech and AgTech, Mayor, but I can use both of them fluently now. So, but the fact that the highest level of the state has declared this as something that we need to expand is really encouraging when we're sitting here with our Lexington plan.
And another great question from our audience here. How do we as local farmers, whether agriculturally or in the equine livestock business, get involved with different agri-tech programs around the city of Lexington?
I think maybe Dean Cox or Mayor Gorton may know better than me here, but I think one kind of easy answer is to attend things like this and kind of take the pulse of what's going on in these sectors. And maybe it's not RedLeaf, it's somebody that may be more applicable to exactly what you're doing in your business that you didn't know existed before this sort of a panel discussion. And so definitely these sort of roundtable and panel discussions are a great way to kind of take the temperature on what's going on around the city. And I know I at least find them valuable when I kind of attend them, just to learn about things that are quite frankly a bit under my nose, but I had no idea were happening within the city. So that would be my kind of easy answer there.
Back before COVID, the chamber and the mayor's office and others had some open forums for folks interested in local entrepreneurship and agri-tech, and looking forward to when we can do that again, because it's hard to prescribe something for everybody, but when you get people together and talk about their businesses, all kinds of ideas come out. So hopeful for those times again.
Absolutely. Mayor Gorton, did you want to add anything to how people can stay apprised of opportunities and ways to get involved in these initiatives as we move forward with them?
Well, I go back to what Jordan said, educating ourselves. We always need to educate ourselves. We're pretty good at educating ourselves about the businesses in the urban area, aren't we? We research and we look at which business do we want to use and which one, is more local. But I think that ag tech is such a sort of a new area in some ways, and we're talking about it here pretty frequently and at a higher level. So I think educating ourselves and farmers who might want to get into something like Jordan is working with the James Farm, which I see Robert here. Hello. So, I think there's great potential for farmers who want to partner on these kinds of things, but we got to educate ourselves first, right?
Absolutely. And that's, another reason why we're so grateful that you all agreed to talk to us this evening, and that all of the people that attended are here just to really, this is something that I've been following, but I've had a lot of people ask me, what is ag tech? What is that? What does that really mean? What does it mean for the future? how has COVID impacted these initiatives? And, other than, the impacts that we know about, have there been any specific, COVID related impacts that we hope to ease as this year moves forward? And Jordan, I don't know if you've seen that in RedLeaf's work or not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's hard to think of a sector that hasn't been touched in some way by this, but you know, even for us at the pre-revenue on the cusp of commercializing stage, we've been unable to send our sales team out to any locations to actually engage with people personally. So trying to do what we can through Zoom and just kind of effectuate a sales program online as opposed to the more traditional way has been something we've been trying to get over. Working with outside vendors and partners that are doing any sort of analytical work for us have oftentimes been short-staffed, or at times earlier in 2020 shut down altogether. So it can slow down when you're a small startup and your burn rate is something you're looking at every other day. When things are stalling, it can kind of be death by 1,000 cuts, really, than one swift blow. And then I guess lastly, I would just say kind of what Dean Cox was saying, like the missed chances at having the round tables where you do speak with people that you otherwise may not have come across. Just feels like a bit of a missed opportunity that we may not even appreciate because they're not happening right now. But definitely at that last one I saw with Dean Cox and Mayor Gorton, I remember like people like having these aha moments of, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. And walking away with like a potential collaboration out of something that they thought they were just going to kind of show up to for an hour. So I think those are the biggest things I've seen on kind of the small business end.
I would have to agree. I had sort of forgotten about that. But it was awesome because the synergy of like what Jordan said, the aha moment. Oh my gosh, they're doing this. I'm doing this. We could work together. Oh, it was huge. And that synergy is really important to this because the tech space, and I think particularly the ag tech space, there are a lot of commonalities there. And, with our focus groups, Dean, I remember after the focus groups, people were connecting, people who had served on a focus group. And Jordan, I think you were on one of our focus groups, and they were saying, we need to talk. That we are missing that. Zoom is great, in a lot of ways. But when you click leave and we're done, then if you want to connect with someone, you have to take an extra step. You don't just walk across the room and say, could we chat a minute? And so those synergies, I think, are huge in this particular business.
I have are you done, Mayor? Sorry. Yeah, I have a comment about maybe a silver lining from COVID. Remember when you couldn't get the meat you wanted in the refrigerator? I mean, in the grocery store. And I mentioned earlier the beef processing industry that's being bolstered now for local consumption. So maybe a silver lining from COVID is that we are looking to more local food sources. And that certainly has been a lot of the reason the beef processing plant expansions are continuing and funded by the Ag Development Board. So it kind of is an opportunity to grab to refine a kind of a local food system in Kentucky.
Absolutely, Dean Cox. I think that's a great point. Not only has it, I think, made people think more about where their food comes from and look to local food and local products in general. I mean, the supply chain, I think, has really been put under a microscope as a result of COVID. And we've had this incredible opportunity to say, we need to think about where these things are coming from. And I think that's just another opportunity for agricultural technology here is, we have the benefit. We can say, where is this coming from? It's coming from a farm that's 10 to 15 minutes down the road. And that's an incredible synergy, an incredible opportunity. And just one reason why I'm so grateful to all three of you for joining this conversation tonight. So in the mayor's, that was a good note about how difficult it is. Like you said, when you press leave from these Zoom meetings, you don't have that chance to follow up with people and make those connections. And so what we've been trying to do with these Citizens Planning Academy sessions is offer our attendees the opportunity to continue this conversation. And so we are going to make available right after we wrap up here in just a moment, breakout rooms for our attendees. So if you'd like to stay for a breakout session after we hear closing remarks from our panelists, please stay in the Zoom, and then you will be automatically sorted into breakout rooms. We will be putting some questions for you all to consider in your breakout rooms in the chat that you can talk about with your fellow breakout group attendees. We'd certainly encourage you all to designate, or if someone would be willing to volunteer to take notes while you're in your breakout room, and then send them to us. We have loved collecting the information that people have discussed in their breakout rooms, in these small group conversations after we've had these panel discussions, to really dive a little bit deeper into what you learned, what you didn't know about AgTech or AgriTech that you learned. And please send those to us at info@fayettealliance.com. So before we wrap up and I give you all the opportunity to join a breakout room, I'd love to just open the floor here for some final closing remarks from any of you about what you hope people take away from this conversation, and reasons why they should stay tuned for the continuing development of AgTech in Lexington.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do a quick first pass at this. I mean, as I said before, I think the best thing you can do is just continue learning and attending these things. For Lexington in particular, I think we're going to figure out exactly kind of what opportunities are out there for ag tech in the city, and as well as like the skill sets that, quite frankly, have been here long before I've been around, and have been in the works really for decades in terms of building both the infrastructure and the human capital needed in the city and in the land with the growers to bring some of these things to the market. And I guess my last point would just be that, the statistic everybody always talks about is that by 2050 we're going to need to double our production in terms of feeding the world's population. So even beyond Lexington, AgTech, AgriTech, whatever you want to call it, is more than just like a potential opportunity for Lexington. It's kind of a bit of a call to action. So I mean, if you view it through that lens, then sometimes it gives you that catalyst to do things like show up to these and to ask the follow-up questions and to get involved. So stay involved would be my takeaway.
I want to put a ditto under Feed the World. That is something that, for those of you who knew Dr. Pierce Lyons, he talked about that a lot, because much of the world doesn't have the food they need. Now, Beth Overman has been cooking for all of us, right? So, but it is a very important point, is that the areas that can grow food and can research, what's next, or, oh, what if we do this, are those who will be successful at this. And I think that's really important for our world. So like Jordan said, we have a lot of the things we already need right here. One of you, I think Councilmember Lamb, said that thinking about the tech piece, this makes it even more important to get the broadband in the rural area. And this is a challenge because, as you know, the more customers you can have on a mile of broadband, the cheaper it is. But we're about, I think, we're doing a pilot with that. And all these kinds of things we just need to keep thinking about. And then I want each of you to think about the issue of venture capital and funding, not necessarily for you. That's not what I'm talking about. But you might know someone, or you might talk with someone who has the potential to be a funder for these startups. And it's a big need. So thanks so much, Brittany, for the opportunity tonight.
I also noted Councilmember Lamb's comment about digital access, because it is really serious. And with our food connection at UK, we're getting local food from 8 or 10 different counties. How can those folks improve their operations if they can't get broadband and they can't get the technologies they need? So that is huge. And the good thing is we eat 24/7, 365. And I think we're at a time right now where we can claim a greater role in enhancing our food system and all the technologies that support it as we go forward.
Well, thank you all so much, Dean Cox, Mayor Gorton, Jordan Wood. Each of you have brought a lot of light to this topic, and I hope for the rest of the attendees made everybody as excited as I feel, honestly, about learning more about this topic and really how it's going to continue to grow here in Lexington. I already, invested in this place and love it for so many different reasons. And I'm just really excited to watch this sector and this industry grow. As we said at the very beginning, our land is our most unique asset that they're not making any more of. And it's our factory floor. So protecting it so businesses like these can continue to grow and our economy can continue to diversify is just so critical. So I just want to, again, thank each of our panelists so much for being with us this evening, all of you all for attending. And again, for those of you who would like to and are willing to stay for the breakout sessions, I'll be